Chapter 27, Pandora's Box. The next day I was helping Phoebe lug her suitcase home. I said, Phoebe, I know you've been upset lately. I have not been upset lately, she said. Sometimes, Phoebe, I like you a lot. Why, thank you. But sometimes, Phoebe, I feel like dumping your cholesterol-free body out the window. She did not have a chance to respond because we were at her house, and she was more interested in besieging her father with questions. Any news? Did Mom come back? Did she call? Sort of, he said. She phoned Mrs. Cadaver. Mrs. Cadaver? Whatever for? Why would she? Phoebe, calm down. I don't know why she phoned Mrs. Cadaver. I haven't been able to speak to Mrs. Cadaver myself yet. She isn't home. She left a note here. He showed it to Phoebe. Norma called to say she is okay. Beneath Mrs. Cadaver's signature was a P.S. saying that Mrs. Cadaver would be away until Monday. I don't believe that Mom called Mrs. Cadaver. Mrs. Cadaver is making that up. Mrs. Cadaver probably killed her and chopped her up. I'm calling the police. They had a huge argument, but at last Phoebe fizzled out. Her father said he'd been calling everyone he could think of to see if her mother had indicated where she might be going. He would continue calling tomorrow. He promised he would speak with Mrs. Cadaver if he did not receive a letter or a direct phone call from her mother by Wednesday. He would call the police. Phoebe came out on the porch with me as I was leaving. She said, I've made a decision. I'm going to go to the police myself. I might even go to the police station. I don't have to wait until Wednesday. I can go whenever I want. That night she phoned me. She was whispering again. It seems so quiet here. I don't know what is the matter with me. I was lying on my bed and I can't sleep. My bed's too hard. On Monday, Phoebe gave her oral report on Pandora. She began in a quivering voice. For some reason, Ben already talked about my topic, Pandora, and when he did the report on Prometheus. However, Ben made a few little mistakes about Pandora. Everyone turned to stare at Ben. I did not, he said. Yes, you did. Phoebe's lip trembled. Pandora was not sent to man as a punishment, but as a reward. Was not, Ben said. Was too, Phoebe said. Zeus decided to give man a present since man seemed lonely down here on earth with all the animals to keep them company. So Zeus made a sweet and beautiful woman, and then Zeus invited all the other gods to dinner. It was a very civilized dinner with matching plates. Mary Lou and Ben exchanged an eyebrow message. Zeus asked the gods to give the woman presents to make her feel like a welcome guest. Phoebe glanced at me. They gave her wonderful things, a fancy shawl, a silver dress, beauty. Ben interrupted. I thought you said she was already beautiful. They gave her more beauty. Are you satisfied? Her lip was no longer trembling, but she was blushing. The gods also gave her the ability to sing, the power of persuasion, a gold crown, flowers, and many truly wonderful things such as that. But because of all these gifts, Zeus named her Pandora, which means the gift of all. Phoebe was getting into it. There were two other gifts that I did not mention yet. One of them was curiosity. That is why all women are curious, by the way, because it was the gift given to the very first woman. Ben said, I wish she'd been given the gift of silence. Last, there was a beautiful box covered in gold and jewels, and this was very important. She was forbidden to open the box. Ben said, then why did he give it to her? He was beginning to irritate Phoebe. You could tell. She said, that's what I'm telling you. It was a present. But why did he give her a present that she couldn't open? I do not know. It's just the story. As I was saying, Pandora was not supposed to open the box, but because she had been given so much curiosity, she really, really, really wanted to know what was inside. So one day she opened the box. I knew it, Ben said. I knew she was going to open that box the minute you said she was not supposed to open it. Inside the box were evils of the world, such as hatred, envy, plagues, sickness, and cholesterol. There were brain tumors and sadness, lunatics and kidnapping murderers. She glanced at Mr. Berkway before rushing on. And all that kind of thing. Pandora tried to close the lid when she saw the horrible things that were coming out of it, but she could not get it closed. And that is why there are all these evils in the world. There is only one good thing in the box. What was it, Ben asked? As I was about to explain, the only good thing in the box was hope. And that is why, even though there are many evils in the world, there is still a little hope. She held up a picture of Pandora opening the box and the whole shebang of gremlins floating out of it. Pandora looked frightened. That night I kept thinking about Pandora's box. I wondered why someone would put in a good thing such as hope in a box with sickness and kidnapping and murder. It was fortunate that it was there, though. If not, people would have birds of sadness nesting in their hair all the time because of nuclear war and the greenhouse effect and bombs and stabbings and lunatics. There must have been another box with all the good things in it, like sunshine and love and trees and all that. Who had the good fortune to open that one? And was there one bad thing down in the bottom of the good box? Maybe it was worry. Even when everything seemed good and fine, I worry that something will go wrong, and that will change everything. My mother, my father, and I all seemed fine and happy in our house until the baby died. Could you actually say the baby died since it never really breathed? Did its birth and death occur at the same moment? Could you die before you were born? Phoebe's family had not seemed fine, even before the arrival of the lunatic and the messages, and the disappearance of Mrs. Winterbottom. I knew that Phoebe was convinced that her mother was kidnapped because it was impossible for Phoebe to imagine that her mother could leave for any other reason. I wanted to call Phoebe and say that maybe her mother had gone looking for something. Maybe her mother was unhappy. Maybe there was nothing Phoebe could do about it. When I told this part to Gram and Gramps, Gram said, "You mean it had nothing to do with Phoebe?" They looked at each other. They didn't say anything, but there was something in the look that suggested I had just said something important. For the first time, it occurred to me that maybe my mother's leaving had nothing whatsoever to do with me. It was separate and apart. We couldn't own our mothers. On the night after Phoebe had given her Pandora report, I thought about hope in Pandora's box. Maybe when everything seemed sad and miserable, Phoebe and I could both hope that something might start to go right. Chapter 28, The Black Hills. When we saw the first sign for the Black Hills, the whispers changed and once again commanded, "Rush, hurry, rush." We had spent too long in South Dakota. There was only 2 days left and a long way to go. Maybe we should skip the Black Hills, I said. "What?" Gramps said. "Skip the Black Hills? Skip Mount Rushmore? We can't do that." "But today's the 18th. It's the 5th day. Do we have a deadline or something someone didn't tell me about?" Grams asked. "Heck, we got all the time in the..." Grams gave him a look. "I gotta see these Black Hills. We'll go quick about it, Chickabiddy." The whispers walloped me. Rush, rush, rush. I knew we wouldn't make it to Idaho in time. I thought about sneaking off while Gram and Gramps were looking at the Black Hills. Maybe I could hitch a ride with someone who drove fast, but the thought of someone speeding, careening around those curves, especially the snaking curves down in Lewiston, Idaho, which I'd heard so much about, when I thought about that, it made me dizzy and sick. "Heck," Gramps said, "I ought to turn this wheel over to you, Chickabiddy. All this driving's making me crazy as a loon." He was only joking, but he knew I could drive. He taught me how to drive in his old pickup truck when I was 11. We used to ride around on the dirt roads on their farm. I drove and he smoked his pipe and told stories. He said, "You're a heck of a driver, Chickabiddy, but don't you tell your mama I taught you. She thrashed me half to death." I used to love to drive that old green pickup truck. I dreamed about turning 16 and getting my license, but then when Mama left, something happened to me. I became afraid of things that I had never been afraid of before, and driving was one of those things. I didn't even like to ride in cars, let alone drive the truck. The Black Hills were not very black. Pines covered the hills, and maybe at dusk they looked black, but when we saw them at midday, they were dark green. It was an eerie sight. All those rolling dark hills, a cool wind blew down through the pines, and the trees swished secrets among them. My mother had always wanted to see the Black Hills. It was one of the sights she was most looking forward to on her trip. She used to tell me about the Black Hills, which were sacred to the Sioux Indians. It was their holy land, but white settlers took it as their own. The Sioux are still fighting for their land. I half expected a Sioux to stop our car from entering. The thing is, I would have been on his side. I would have said, "Take it. It's yours." We drove through the Black Hills to Mount Rushmore. At first, we didn't think we were in the right place, but then jing bang, right before us, there, high up on a cliff face, were 6-foot faces of Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Teddy Roosevelt, carved right into the rock, staring somberly down at us. It was fine seeing the presidents. I got nothing against the presidents, but you'd think the Sioux would have been mighty sad to have those white faces carved into their sacred hill. I bet my mother was upset. I wonder whoever carved them couldn't have put a couple Indians up there too. Graham and Gramps seemed disappointed as well. Graham didn't even want to get out of the car, so we didn't stay long. Gramps said, "I had enough of South Dakota. How about you, Chickabiddy? How about you, Gooseberry? Let's get a move on." By late afternoon, we were well into Wyoming, and I added up the miles left to go. Maybe we could make it, just maybe. Then Gramps said, "I hope nobody minds if we stop at Yellowstone. It'd be a sin to miss Yellowstone," Graham said. "Is that where Old Faithful is?" "Oh, I would love to see Old Faithful." She looked back at me. "We'll hurry. Why, I bet we'll be in Idaho by the 20th without a problem at all."